I found out that I was adopted when I was little, not out of love, but because their son needed an organ transplant. And now that I'm grown, they're hinting again. You could help your brother one more time. After all, this is your family. My name is Sam. I was never a problem child. I didn't scream, didn't break toys, didn't run away from home, didn't get into fights at school. On the contrary, I always tried to be quiet, invisible, convenient. I thought that was the right thing to do, that's how it was supposed to be. But deep inside, I always felt something strange. Like the sense that you're just a guest in someone else's home. That everything around you is nice, warm, but not yours. My parents were your typical good family. Mom, a biology teacher. Dad, a lawyer. My older brother Alex, handsome and smart. The kind of person any family would be proud of. And me? I was the younger one. Always smaller, quieter, less noticeable. In family photos, I was always off to the side. And it wasn't because they didn't love me. Quite the opposite, I never lacked anything. I had new sneakers, a good bike, my own computer. They helped me with homework, took me to clubs, paid for tutors. So what more could I want? But it wasn't about things. It was about the feelings. The little things you don't notice right away. For example, on Alex's birthdays, he'd always get something special, a trip, a gadget, a surprise. And me? I got something nice, but just a gift. No sparkle in their eyes. No warm. You earned this. We're so proud of you. Just, here. Take it. And then, the conversations. They spoke to Alex like an adult by the time he was 12. Me? Even at 16 I'd hear. You're still too young. You don't understand. It felt like my opinion never really mattered. But I stayed silent. Because they were my parents. My family. And I thought, maybe it's just my imagination. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm just not like Alex. Maybe I'm the one to blame for how I feel. One time, when I was about 12, I got sick. High fever, they took me to the hospital. That night, lying in bed, I heard my mom talking on the phone. She was standing in the hallway, thinking I was asleep. Her voice was quiet, but clear. I'm really worried. He can't take any risks. He might still be needed for Alex. I didn't understand. Who was he? And what did she mean by needed? I thought maybe it was about some other treatment. Maybe she misspoke. Maybe I misheard. That was the first time I sensed something was off. But I forgot. Or at least tried to. Pushed it out of my head. Because sometimes, it's easier not to know the truth. I came home from the hospital. Life went on. Alex got accepted into a prestigious university. My parents were proud. Me? I was just there. A shadow in the background. The second son. Not a problem. Not a burden. Just convenient. But the real story, my real story, didn't begin until a few years later. And when it did, I couldn't close my eyes anymore. I was 16 when things started to feel suspicious. That age where you're kind of an adult, but still locked in the cage of childhood. And from that cage, you start noticing the cracks in the walls. I began to notice how Mom talked about me, not as a person, but more like something valuable. Not in an emotional sense. More like something important, functional. She always repeated, Sam is special. He's unique. We have to protect him. That started to worry me. I asked her once, why am I special? Because you were a gift. We prayed to God, and then you came. It was supposed to sound sweet. But it felt like I was an answer to someone's problem. A remedy. I started looking through old photos. From Alex's birth, hundreds. From mine, a few. All taken later. I once asked where my baby photos from the hospital were. Oh, that time was stressful, we didn't take any pictures. Everything broke. It doesn't matter now, right? Another one of those things you try to forget, but your brain doesn't let you. It logs it away. Stores it like a puzzle piece, waiting for the rest to form the full picture. In biology class, we studied blood types. Our teacher told us to find out ours, along with our parents. I came home and asked, "Mom, what's my blood type? I think it's B positive. Or maybe A. We found out a long time ago." "What's yours?" "O negative." "And your dad's B." "Why?" "Just for school." The problem was, our teacher explained that certain combinations are impossible. And when I compared them, something didn't add up. If Mom is type O and Dad is type B, then I should be either type O or B. But I wasn't. I was A. Again, I thought, maybe a mistake. Maybe it was recorded wrong. Maybe I was being too paranoid. Then something else happened. Alex got sick. Nothing serious, some weird virus, high fever, weakness. They took him to the hospital. And I remember Mom sitting in the kitchen, holding my medical file. She looked at it like it was gold. "You know, Sam, we need you so much. You're our sunshine. Without you, we wouldn't manage." I smiled. For the first time, maybe, I truly felt important. But not even a minute later, she added, "Alex is lucky to have a brother like you." It was meant to be a compliment. But something inside me clenched. I didn't know why. But something about that phrase felt wrong. It was the third time I heard it, that I was lucky, valuable, that I might be needed. But not as a person. More as something functional. One evening, I gathered the courage to ask my dad. "Dad, tell me, was I planned?" He was silent for a few seconds. The longest silence of my life. Then he said, "Life is complicated, son. Sometimes it gives you what you didn't plan for, but what you desperately need." I didn't understand what he meant. But at that moment I clearly felt. I wasn't just a son. I was a solution. And that became the first real signal. That I wasn't in this family by chance. And maybe not for the reasons I'd been told my whole life. It happened almost by accident. I wasn't looking for the truth. The truth found me. I was just searching the closet for my passport to complete some student paperwork. When I reached for the familiar yellow cover, a thick old folder fell from the stack. The kind you see in movies, dark blue, with a worn transparent sleeve on the front. Written on it in ballpoint pen. "SR Medical Records." At first I thought it was something routine, tests, vaccinations. But when I opened it, a chill ran down my spine. Temporary guardianship. Medical adoption under special conditions. Consent of biological parents for permanent transfer of rights. Then came dates. My birth date. Their signatures. And another document. From a hospital. The name of the clinic, Hematology Department. Express donor compatibility analysis. I flipped through page after page, unable to understand what I was feeling. First shock. Then fear. Then emptiness. And finally, the thing I had been afraid to face since childhood settled in. I wasn't their son. Not by blood. Not by birth. I was selected. Chosen. Brought into their lives because I was a match. A medical match. I hadn't been born into this family. They took me in because my brother needed a donor. I sat in my room for a long time. I couldn't breathe. My entire childhood, all our family, traditions, holidays, Christmas mornings, camps, vacations, suddenly felt fake. Like a set piece. Beautiful, but not real. I wanted to scream. To break something. But I just sat there, frozen, as if the weight of my body had vanished. As if I'd turned into air. And then I did the one thing I had feared since I was a child. I went to my mother. She was sitting in the kitchen, reading something. When she saw my face, she immediately went pale. Her eyes dropped to the blue folder in my hands. "Sam," her voice cracked. "What did you find that?" I said nothing. For a long time. She looked like she wanted to come up with something, an excuse, a story. But she realized it was useless. So she simply said, "We love you very much, son." You saved us. Without you, Alex wouldn't have survived. We searched for a compatible donor across the country. And then you came. We couldn't lose you. You couldn't lose me? Or you couldn't lose a donor for Alex? My voice was shaking, but my words were clear. It was complicated. We truly didn't think we'd grow to love you. But you became ours. We raised you. We gave you everything. Except the truth. She went silent. Her eyes were red. But I didn't see what I wanted to see in them. Not guilt. Not shame. But fear. Fear that I now knew. I stepped outside. The air was cold. I breathed deeply. For the first time, without the mask. Without the lies. Without the version of myself I used to be. I didn't feel betrayed. That would have been too easy. I felt used. Like a tool, kept around for as long as it served a purpose. And now, once I'd grown and was no longer needed, they had grown colder. More distant. And I remembered the words I had heard for years. Don't get sick, you might still be needed. Alex is lucky to have a brother like you. Sam is special. Now I knew why I was special. Because I wasn't a son. I was a solution. After that night at home, I was no longer the same. Something cracked inside me, not loudly, but permanently. It wasn't like an explosion. It was more like standing on ice, smooth, white, shining, when suddenly it begins to crack. You're still standing, but you know you're going to fall. I no longer cared about the words. Son, child, or you're ours. They had become hollow. I tried to talk to them. More than once. Did you love me, for who I was, or for who I could be for Alex? Mom tried to hug me. Sam, we raised you, cared for you, taught you. Isn't that love? Did you ever think what it's like to grow up in a family that didn't choose you with their hearts, but with your blood type? She lowered her eyes. Dad said. Sam, we didn't want to lie. But you were a child. Then a teenager. And then, it just became too late. We truly believed you were ours. You were ours. No. I was theirs. Like property. Like a convenient organ. Like a backup plan. They had nothing to say. And the worst part, what I saw in their eyes wasn't anger. Not even guilt. It was confusion. As if I was their unfortunate truth, the one that was never supposed to come out. I stayed quiet. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I just began to disappear. Everything I did on autopilot. I put in my earbuds at the table. Avoided eye contact. Asked for nothing. Said nothing in return. They stayed quiet too. As if they were afraid to touch me again. As if they knew I was no longer the boy who had once been convenient. I didn't speak to Alex at all. He knew nothing, or at least pretended not to. His illness was long behind him. He was studying in the capital, rarely came home. In our family, he was always the fragile one, the one who needed protecting. But who protected me? The one who'd been on a hook since birth. I remembered being 6 years old in the hospital. They were taking tests, inserting needles, drawing blood. I cried. Mom held my hand and said, Sure, this is for your brother. He's sick. You're a hero. I was a hero. Without a choice. I was a donor. Without consent. From that moment on, I began to see my life as an outsider. Like a viewer watching a movie where the main character wasn't even me. Someone who had never been told the truth. Someone who had always played a role, without knowing it was a role. I stared at myself in the mirror and asked, who am I? A person? A son? A donor? A project? A solution? A lucky match of ideal cells? I started reading stories online about adopted kids. Most of them spoke of love, of acceptance, of healing. But I didn't find one like mine. Because I wasn't taken in out of love. I was taken out of need. Out of cold calculation. They were afraid to lose someone of their own. So they found someone else. That's when I went to therapy. For the first time. On my own. No permission. No conversations. I just made the appointment. I sat across from a woman in her 40s. For the first 10 minutes, I said nothing. She waited patiently. Then I said, "They didn't love me. They assembled me." "Who are they?" she asked. "My parents. They adopted me not out of love, but out of necessity. I was a donor for their son. And I don't know if I even have the right to be angry. Do you feel like a son?" "No. I feel like a function." That first conversation was a turning point. For the first time, I said out loud what I had buried deep inside. And it didn't make things easier. But it made them clearer. I realized betrayal isn't just something you do. It's also silence. And silence can cut deeper than a blade. After that, I made a decision. I won't stay silent anymore. I didn't know what would come next. But I knew one thing. I am not a tool. And if they don't understand that, that's no longer my problem. One word haunted me over and over. Gratitude. I was supposed to be grateful that they raised me. Grateful I didn't end up in an orphanage. Grateful I had a home, a bed, food. That they took me to the park, bought me a winter coat, paid for tutors. They'd say, "We gave you everything. Everything we could." But gratitude isn't shackles. And love isn't a currency you owe back like a debt. I sat in my room, staring at old childhood photos. In them, I was smiling. Small. Happy. But was I really happy? Or did I just not understand that I wasn't a son, just part of a plan? I remembered when I was 7 and had a bone marrow procedure. It hurt. A lot. I cried. And Mom said, "You're strong. You're doing this for your brother." She didn't comfort me like a son. She reassured me like a donor. I didn't realize it then. But now, everything clicked into place. After I started seeing a therapist, I began to notice just how deeply I'd taught myself not to feel. For years, I'd buried my emotions, my desires, my anger. Because since I was a kid, I was told, "Don't be selfish. Think of others. You should be grateful." And I was forced to be. Like a prisoner thanking someone for a bowl of soup. But now, I couldn't anymore. Gratitude no longer saved me. It only choked me. I began to feel anger. Pure, burning, real anger. Why did I have to stay quiet? Why did I have to be convenient? Why was I a rescue project and not a child to be loved simply for existing? I started writing a letter. Not for them. For me. To pour out every word I'd held back. "Mom, Dad, I am not your son. I was your solution. Your plan B. I'm not asking for forgiveness for not wanting to live like this anymore. I'm not angry. I'm free. You created me not out of love, but out of fear. And that burden is yours. Not mine." I read those lines over and over again. At first I cried. Then I smiled. Because in those words, for the first time, I was there. Not theirs. Not for my brother. Just me. Mom came into my room a few times. She didn't say anything. Just watched. Her eyes held something that looked less like sadness, and more like fear. The kind of fear that comes when someone realizes they've lost something important, and have no idea how to get it back. Dad tried to talk. "Sam, look, we made mistakes. But we still love you. Love isn't a cover for using someone. You're being unfair. And were you ever fair to me?" I didn't shout. I didn't slam the table. My anger had no voice. It was deep and quiet. Like the cracking ice beneath your feet. I wasn't compromising anymore. Gratitude is not a debt. Love is not a contract. I owe them nothing. That evening, I didn't join the family for dinner. Didn't show up for their family time. Didn't sit at the table. Because for the first time, I realized that table wasn't mine. This wasn't my family. It was a system that had programmed me to be useful, not happy. I stood up, grabbed a backpack, tossed in a few things: documents, laptop, cash, and I left. Silently. No one stopped me. I left a letter on the kitchen table. No threats. No accusations. Just the truth. I'm thankful for the roof, the food, the clothes. But I can't thank you for love that was never real. I'm leaving, because I finally want to be who I am. Not who you wanted me to be. Sam. I stepped out at dawn. The city was still asleep. And in that silence I felt, for the first time, alive. Not convenient. Not chosen. Not foreign. Just alive. When I walked out of the house that morning, everything was quiet. No one shouted after me. No one asked where I was going. It felt like the world already knew my time had come. And from now on, everything would be different. The city was just waking up. People hurried to work, bakers opened their shops, children were still asleep. And I stood at the bus stop with a small backpack on my shoulders and one thought in my head: everything had changed. Even if, on the outside, nothing had. I rented a small apartment, just a few blocks from the train station. I didn't have much money, but it was mine. Earned through freelance gigs, odd jobs I did at night. I used to save that money for the future. Now I realized that future had already begun. The first nights were strange. The silence was unsettling. I didn't hear Mom's footsteps in the kitchen, or Dad talking on the phone in the hallway. No one asked, "Where are you going? When will you be home? Are you upset?" I lay there and listened to myself. And for the first time, it wasn't the voice of guilt. Not the voice of fear. But something soft, steady. "You're free." But with that freedom came anxiety. What if I was wrong? What if I destroyed something I once had? What if I actually loved them? And maybe they loved me? Those thoughts crept in at night. Quietly, like thieves. But each time, I remembered the blue folder. And everything became clear again. I began rebuilding myself from scratch. I returned to therapy. Regularly this time. I kept a journal, pages and pages each day. I got a job at a cafe. Not because it was a dream, but because it was mine. No one got it for me. Through connections. No one told me where to go. It was my choice. And that small choice gave me strength. I stopped being a project. I started being a person. One day my phone rang. "Mom." I didn't answer. Then it rang again. And again. Text messages. "Sam, please talk to us. We're worried. You're our son. We love you. If you want, we'll apologize. Just come back." I didn't respond. Not right away. A week later, I finally replied. "I haven't disappeared. I just can't live by your rules anymore. I need truth, not convenience. I need freedom, not function. I don't hate you. But I love myself more." They never replied again. And that was okay. Because silence is better than manipulation. A month later, I got a letter. From Alex. "Hey. I didn't know. No one told me. And if it's true, I'm sorry. I always thought we were real brothers. And if I caused you pain, I'm asking for forgiveness. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to lash out. You were always their favorite. You got everything they took from me." But another part understood. He was part of the same system. Maybe even a victim, too. I wrote back simply. "Thanks for reaching out. This isn't about blame. It's about choice. I made mine. I hope one day you can make yours, not as a son, but as a person. My new life wasn't easy. But it was mine. I chose who to speak to. Where to work. Who to call a friend. Who to let into my heart. And day by day I realized. Freedom isn't escape. It's the courage to be yourself, even when others don't approve. I stopped hiding from my past. I began writing a story. About myself. About how I was raised not as a son, but as a donor. About how love without truth isn't love. About how sometimes you have to leave to avoid disappearing. And most of all, about learning to love yourself. Even when others used you as a resource.